Presentation by Barton and LaJudas on Shipbuilders Creek Engineering Analysis. I'm going to hand the baton over to Art and the engineers.
Thank you, Supervisor. So just a little background on this this item, this topic. Shipbuilders Creek is parallels, this portion of it parallels 5 Mile line to the north end of 5 Mile line before it gets to gravel. There are sanitary sewer lines that cross this creek. There are sanitary sewer lines that parallel this creek that are exposed. This has been a long-standing issue and concern with the town, even prior to 2015, but in 2015, far back as we could find, the town stepped into an agreement with B&L to do an evaluation on this. It sort of went by the wayside in 2020, and Aaron's going to cover this more in detail. In 2020, we had a failure of the pipe in that creek, which required really emergency services, emergency construction to stabilize a small portion of the bank, stabilize the pipe. And we have been watching this structure. There's a manhole. I'm watching the pipe. We keep an eye on it. It's gotten to the point now, it's gotten even worse. I went through back through some emails that I found in 2020. Previous council member Dean had commented that this has been on the radar for many, many years and just never been resolved. So, like I said, it's gotten to the point now we had to really look at this. B&L has taken a look at this. Theron and Aaron are here to sort of share a little bit of history on it and some of their findings and possibly some options moving forward. So I will turn it over to Ron and Aaron.
Hi everyone, I'm Erin Ryan. I'm in the Water Resources Group at Barton and LaJudas. And this is Theron Bisco. He's in our environmental group, and together we're going to present to you our proposal looking for the study portion of this project. So our agenda today, we're going to cover the condition of the infrastructure within the creek and also the creek itself, because erosion within the creek is causing the exposure of those sewer pipes. We'll get into the different alternatives we plan to look into as part of the study. For each of those alternatives, they will cover permitting and funding associated with each of them as well. And then lastly, I'll cover the deliverables that we'll try to hand over to you at the end of the study. So as you can see from this aerial, the blue line shows the alignment of Shipbuilders Creek, and the sewer infrastructure is in that red circle area. Those red lines represent culverts at either of those roads, which kind of limit the extents that we would imagine would be the maximum sewer stream rehabilitation that we would look into.
Here, let me jump in before you change that. So to put it in perspective as to where it is, it starts almost by Herman's Farm Market and heads north.
So, as Art mentioned, a little bit of project history. B&L had become involved in the project in 2015, and in 2016 we had authored a memo to the town with some recommendations on stream restoration. That kind of fizzled out, but as Art had mentioned, the town did perform that repair of an 8-inch sewer along the bank of it. But however, since then, the remaining infrastructure is continuing to become more and more exposed, which is posing more and more of a liability to the town. So here we are today, looking into different options on how to fix the problem. Oh my gosh, I just gotta keep my hand here. So infrastructure condition from 2018 to 2024. The photo on the left shows a 15-inch pipe that crosses the creek, and a manhole is there kind of hiding behind foliage. So as you can see in the middle of the photo, that pipe was already fully exposed, but there was some of the concrete encasement remaining around the edge of it, which is shown circled in red. Fast forwarding to today, that concrete encasement is pretty much providing no protection to that pipe. The concrete's jutting right up into the air, and that pipe is fully exposed. So it wouldn't take very much, some piece of debris coming down the stream, hitting that pipe, causing a breakage in it, that could be potentially bad for the town for two reasons. One, the creek water could get into the sewer system, make its way down to the treatment plant, and then that's a really inefficient use of treatment plant power, cleaning cold water. So that is not something that we want to do, but the worst of the two options is the sewage getting into the creek. And this isn't a residential area, so it could be bad publicity for the town as well as human and environmental concerns as well. So here's a couple other photos of that manhole that I mentioned. In the 2018 photo, you can see it's starting to become undermined, but in 2024, that manhole, the slab on the lower part of the manhole really has no support beneath it. Theron was in his waders out in the creek and noticing fish swimming below it. So if that bank continues to erode at the rate that it is, it won't be too long before that manhole could just fall right into the creek. Couple more photos and another figure to kind of help orient ourselves. So that 15-inch pipe is coming in from the left, and the manhole that I referenced is at the top of the screen. Coming in from the other side is the 8-inch pipe from 5 Mile Line Road, which crosses the creek and is fully exposed at that location. Then it runs along the bank, which is the section that was repaired by the town in 2020. That is still in good condition. However, where it crosses the creek again, it is again exposed. So we have 3 different locations in this project area of sewer infrastructure having no protection and providing a liability for the town going forward.
Karen, before you move on, so if you could point out the area, really in the next picture where it's crossing, maybe you're going to get there. The area, the 15-inch coming.
The 15-inch is coming here. And also, can you guys see my mouse?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, this is where that 15-inch pipe that has that concrete jutting out is right in this location. So the way that we would envision approaching a rehabilitation of this would be a two-pronged approach. One, looking into actually fixing the sewer infrastructure itself, and then the second one being addressing extreme effects on it because the erosion is what's really causing these pipes to become exposed. So there we'll get into the stream side of things, but our different options that we are looking into on the sewer side include, we plan to look into 3 different options for sewer repairs. The first of which being an in-place sewer rehabilitation. So this would be a lining of some sort, either cast-in-place pipe lining or some other trenchless method. And as long as you have access to the manholes on either side, which you would in this case, you can pull that liner through, cure it with steam, and then it creates a really hard plastic pipe within the pipe, as you see in that photo. And this can extend the life of a sewer for 50 plus years. It's a very common rehabilitation method. So that would more address kind of the pipe stability and structural integrity of it. The second option that we would propose to look into would be fully realigning that 15-inch sewer. So abandoning the pipe where it crosses at its current location and instead having it cross the creek further upstream. So this would provide a new pipe as well as it would buy us a little bit more cover over the pipe for more added protection. Something I do want to note on both of these options is that New York State DEC, when you're installing a new pipe within a creek, requires 3 feet of cover over the sewer. So in the current alignment and also in this proposed alignment, we would not likely reach that 3 feet. So we need to coordinate with DEC and get them to work with us and approve whatever plan we went with. Lastly, the third option that we propose to look into as part of this study is a relocation of that 8-inch sewer. So this would be abandoning the 2 sections of 8-inch sewer that cross the Shipbuilders Creek at 2 locations. So those would go away, and we would have a new 8-inch sewer along 5 Mile Line Road within the right of way. So that would be great for the town to be able to maintain that sewer much more easily out by the road, completely eliminate the pipe from the creek. We will need to do some additional survey as part of looking into this option. The laterals that come out of all the houses in this area come out of the back of the house towards the existing pipe. So we'll have to check the elevations of those, see if it would be feasible to get them to run towards the street side instead. And if that's not feasible, we could do grinder pumps or some other options in that area, but that'll just increase project price. So, those are the three ways that we propose looking into fixing the sewer. And now Darren will get into the stream side of things.
Sorry.
Actually, a quick question.
Sure.
So where these pipes cross the creek, they're not supposed to be, am I understanding correctly, they shouldn't be exposed?
Correct.
So how do you, what corrective action are you planning on taking so they're not exposed?
So that would be kind of what we would need to discuss with DEC on the feasibility of either realigning or lining those pipes. We could potentially also look into doing a concrete encasement, most likely, around that. But again, because we're kind of coming into the stream, that's where we'll have to coordinate on the stream side of things to make sure that the hydraulics work and we're not kind of providing a damping effect by installing more concrete encasement across the stream.
And that might be one that I can speak to regarding the stream restoration alternatives too, because these two go hand in hand. What we'd be looking at on the stream side are methods to get the channel back to an elevation where we might be able to get reasonable cover. Whether we can meet the 3 feet or not, would still be to be determined, but that's what we would be looking at.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
So Aaron and I walked the stream, I think earlier this spring, late winter, and we observed the condition between 5 Mile Line and Lindsay Circle, which is the next culvert downstream. And this is the typical observance with the bank erosion conditions at the site. We have some areas where we have fairly steep banks, cut banks on the outside of the channel bend, where the stream itself has very little access to its original floodplain. It's incised over the years from erosion. So you get these meander bends that erode the exterior banks. Another thing that we commonly observe that shows that the stream is not really accessing its original floodplain is the formation of a bench at a lower level. We'll go to one of the alternatives that we want to talk about in a few minutes, but this is just essentially another sign that during flood flows or typical high flows, it's not spreading out over top of the floodplain, it's being conveyed down the channel, and because of that, it's eroding the channel bed. This particular section of East Branch Shipbuilders Creek between 5 Mile and Lindsay Circle has a significant amount of debris, both trees and small herbaceous plants that have washed into this section from flood flows and from areas along either bank where there's tree mortality and other issues. And that's being exacerbated from bank erosion where we have trees falling in. But we noticed there's locations where blockages in the channel are the source of erosion. So during high flow events, essentially it causes flow to concentrate underneath or adjacent to these blockages, and then we heave away at the banks. Another single observation we had out there was this old, it was likely a farm crossing culvert that the original landowner had put in. It was never removed when the housing developments had gone in. And this is causing some localized issues as well. It's not in the line of the stream right now. And there's a significant amount of debris on the upstream or left side of this image, stock image, that's causing some additional issues. So that's something, if there were to be a larger project, that we would likely want to remove and get out of there at that point in time. So speaking of the stream stabilization options, there's typically 3 conditions that we look at. The first sort of idealized condition would be to bring the stream back up onto its original floodplain or a floodplain at a lower elevation. So that's a more, what we would call a geomorphic restoration approach. And the maximum extent of a project like that would be essentially from 5 Mile Line to Lindsay Circle if that was required. So you wouldn't need to go beyond that. But that would be the extent of it, and that's nearly 1,800 linear feet at this project site. So something a little bit less than half a mile. A more localized stabilization would look at using a combination of rock, vegetation establishment, and putting in a flood-prone bench. And if you're familiar with our flood insurance rate maps and how they have floodways, that's kind of what we're talking about, is this area where most of the flood flow would be confined and reduce erosion that way. And then the third, which is commonly what we look at for smaller infrastructure projects, is in-place stream stabilization, where we treat only the eroding banks, we protect the infrastructure itself, but we don't try to alter the stream channel. And that would be something we would look at if we, for instance, the manhole that's at risk right now, we want to protect that manhole. And if we can't change and alter the stream, we would protect that manhole in place with boulders and riprap and those types of materials. The one thing I'll say about that is that it is becoming increasingly difficult to get those types of projects authorized with the DEC in certain streams. They do like us to look at alternatives that don't use as much rock, so we have to make a case for using that type of material. In this instance, because there's infrastructure at hand, we can make that argument. But in some restoration projects, that can be a pretty tough sell with the DEC.
What is their objections?
It's mostly habitat-based, and the fact that you don't establish vegetation on the bank quite as easily, so they want that shading factor, the spruce establishment.
Is the photo in their picture aligned to option 3?
It is more aligned to option 3, so that is an example of in-place stabilization from a project site out in Chautauqua County, where because of the size of the stream, we didn't have the option to do a lot of restoration work to change its dimensions. So we just protected the stream bank in place. And in this example project is adjacent to an elementary school, and there's a playground and their septic leach field. So there was infrastructure at hand, and that's the only real approach. And we were able to get that approved with the DEC, but they did initially object. I won't read through all these, but these are the list of regulations and permit approvals we think would apply to these projects depending on the scale. So there would be coordination with the Army Corps and DC and other state agencies, as well as looking at the compliance with the town's own flood damage prevention code and making sure that we're not increasing flood elevations in this area. In the most recent update to the county-wide flood insurance study, East Branch Shipbuilders Creek was added to the firms as a detailed study, so there is analysis that's already been done. Usually what that entails is acquiring the original model data and updating it with your project just to make sure that you're not creating a new hazard. So we did include this. This is some funding options that typically apply to the stream channel stabilization projects. On the left-hand side, the non-ag source, non-point source planning grants are really for concept development and analysis, and these are through the CFA program. And those are studies up from $50,000 to $75,000 that look at essentially stream bank protection, assessing a corridor as a whole to see what the issues are. And a corridor, I would mean in this case, the whole of East Branch Shipbuilders Creek is what they would think of as a scale project for analysis. Debris and sediment management, and also floodplain reconnection. So all those elements are part of this project. So if the town were interested in pursuing funding for analysis, that would be an option for a grant application here in July, potentially. And on the construction side, the WQIP grants provide up in a range of $100,000 to $2 million for different types of projects, but they require a 25% match. So you see those used commonly for stream projects. We did include this little snippet, so why we think that this would be a good candidate stream is because there are impairments listed for Shipbuilders Creek as a watershed. So DC would rank this higher as a project than some of the other streams in the area.
So lastly, the deliverables that we would present to you would be included in a memo and then another presentation like this to the board with our results from the study. That will include looking into the kind of 4 alternatives with pieces from sewer and stream stabilization in order to get a full project that will, assist the town with protecting this infrastructure and making sure that erosion doesn't continue so that it happens again. So the 4 alternatives that would be included in the memo would be the in-place sewer rehab, so that lining with the localized stream stabilization. So that was kind of those just like putting riprap in around the manhole, kind of just keeping everything in place, keeping it protected.
Well, I guess I would add to that we'd be looking at some localized grade changes on the stream as well to get a little more cover in that condition.
Would that one also remove some of the dead trees and stuff around there to clean it up, or just?
Yes, we would usually remove all the debris at that time, and most of those projects require some planting elements, whether that's bringing in new smaller trees and shrubs, seeding with like native species. Those plans are typically submitted with our application to DC, and they do look for that as part of the project, if it's feasible.
Okay, good.
And really to that point, when we were down there, you could see this flooding onto the people's yards. You could see the debris on their yards because of the trees and so forth blocking the creek.
Did you mention something about riprap?
Rip-rap.
What,
It's a common term used for like a large rock that we use for like road stabilization and channel stabilization.
the only other person I ever heard say riprap was
Riprap?
Rip-
You've seen it, John?
riprap?
Yes,
Riprap.
Pete.
Okay.
Riprap. It's an angular stone, right about that big.
Granite or limestone typically, it's blocky. You would know it if you saw it. But it's a dumped stone fill essentially.
Gotcha. Thanks.
There you go. So option number 2 in the memo would include the in-place sewer rehab, that sewer lining with a floodplain reconnection. Darren, do you want to touch on what that would?
So the floodplain reconnection is the larger sort of culvert to culvert potentially scale project where we would look at bringing the channel back up to flood grade without increasing flood elevation. So there's a balance there to be found. So that type of project doesn't use as much hard materials, less rock. It's more about grading and establishing flood-prone area and vegetation establishment. It's a larger scale project. It tends to be less expensive per like foot of stream channel because of the material difference. But it is something worth consideration because so much has changed in this location and there's so little covered.
Yeah, so the idea with that would be bring the grades back up so that we can have the cover that we need for the sewers in place. So option 3 would be that 15-inch sewer realignment, moving it so it's slightly upstream to provide a little bit more cover with that localized stream stabilization, keeping it not the full extent of the, from culvert to culvert. And then lastly will be that 8-inch sewer relocation, bringing the 8-inch pipe back into the 5-mile line right of way with that in-place stream stabilization. So really the only pipe that will be in stream at that point would be the 15-inch and that manhole that is right in the bank. So it would really just be protecting that in place. So for all 4 of these options, they would include site plans and profiles, an opinion of probable cost, and then the permitting requirements and funding opportunities for each of them. And we are thinking that we can get this done in about 3 months after authorization, with the goal to target that CFA application deadline. It's currently not announced, but they are typically due in July.
How much would this project gonna cost?
They don't know yet.
So
Just an estimate.
So I'll take this. So really, the purpose of this this workshop was to share the information and share the options that if the town board would like to move forward to explore all 4 of these options, B&L will give us an opinion of probable costs and so forth. I believe the cost to develop these 4 options to this level is about $20,500.
Thank you.
Just one other question. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this or not, but I know the grant was, what, 100,000 to 2 million with a 25% match?
Yes, it is dependent on category of project, but yes.
Right. Would they accept in-kind services as part of that 25% match? Because I'm thinking a lot of this debris, potentially, its trees can be cut down and removed by the town.
I'd have to look into that, but I think it's cash match. But I know that some municipalities have used labor and in-kind labor and materials for portions of their match. I'd have to check the grant stipulations to see if it's only cash.
So that leads me to my next question. And because in my hometown, we had an incident probably 10 years ago where it was massive rain, and it sits in a valley. And there was so much debris in this creek that ran from outside of town through farmers' fields and down, that it completely flooded the downtown. And I mean flooded the downtown, flooded houses, because all of the debris, due to the volume of water, it broke loose and it all carried it down. And all the banks, on both sides of the banks of that creek, all the way up to out of town, had never been maintained, which caused the problem. And I don't know if the town's responsibility to periodically go in there and remove some of these trees, I don't know, but do you have any knowledge of that, or?
I don't know whether it's the town's responsibility. Pat Stevens may have a little better opinion on that, or Josh, dealing with these floodplains and so forth. I don't know whose responsibility is to maintain that.
Because clearly, it hasn't been done in, I'd say, decades looking at that.
Generally, the requirements to maintain stream banks falls on the homeowner, the property owner. In my time working on DC regulated projects, I've not seen great guidance for what we call stream maintenance or removal of debris. Some states have that, and DC doesn't seem to have like a good strong guidance on what you can and cannot do. I know that your neighbor, the town of Penfield, does take on some of those projects, but I think that's on town-owned property and in parks. Because their maintenance crews, I believe, pursue channel cleaning and some similar types of projects. They do have to get that permitted, but they kind of have like a schedule. And a lot of that's more related more to like residential drainage problems and drainage of some of their own parks and facilities.
It's interesting.
I can be sure that every resident who might be listening tonight is totally shocked that they're responsible to maintain it.
I was just going to say that, how do residents, I would imagine residents don't even know, because you think about some of the open spaces and park spaces, you're not really allowed or supposed to touch them, which is the complete opposite of this, where it's your responsibility to be making sure it's free of debris. So that's
your point,
interesting. I didn't
DEC
know
doesn't
that.
really have, they're not very involved in ensuring that these banks are taken care of, so why would the homeowners
The limit to the guidance that I've seen from DEC is that they'll allow someone to go in on foot and remove like a tree that's fallen. But they do not like homeowners or anybody going into the stream with equipment or having machinery without a permit. So there's kind of like this fine line with what you can accomplish even as a
Right.
homeowner.
I also will say that when we were walking the stream, we came upon a homeowner who was wondering what we were doing, and we explained to him, and he was like, oh, I've experienced, some flooding in the back area and stuff like that, and he was interested in, we were telling him about some grant programs, like, what's it called, Trees for Tribs, about like planting things along tributaries to help prevent the erosion and stuff like that. He was interested, but yeah, definitely he was concerned about the stream as well. And was looking into ways of trying to.
Well, thanks for the pictures, and clearly we need as a town to be doing something like urgent. But the days of looking the other way are long since passed.
But we can't really move forward until we do this to determine which
Correct.
resolution is the best.
So if I understand correctly, and I know it wasn't in the presentation, but if it's about a $20,000 cost to do the 3-month project to give all those deliverables that you just said, tight to the CFA deadline of July 30th. I'm assuming that's when it is. So if we queued up a resolution for next Thursday, May 2nd, to get into that contract for $20,500, not to exceed or better, and authorize the supervisor to sign it, away we go. If the board votes at that time to approve that. Is that accurate?
Seems that way to me.
Yeah.
It's my understanding.
Okay. If that's the path, I would say 2 things. One, please get us something, I mean, this is nice, this is very nice, but the contract or proposal for the 20,000 and delivers, if you can get that to us as early as possible, so the board can review it, so they know what they're voting on next Thursday, that would be very advantageous. And because it's a 3-month deliverable that you put here, I would ask, is it possible to have that be a 2-month deliverable? Because as we are working with various firms, whether it's Barton and Judas, whether it's our grant writing firm for CFA, and there's potentially, well, you named some of the grants that are available in CFA. There may be others, I don't know. I don't want this to go right up to July 27th. You're presenting it to us, and it's like, okay, we got 3 days to apply for the grant. We got to decide which option to take. The town board would need more time to look at the costs and the scope of each of those 4 options to decide which one we think is the one to go for, so, if any, and then have the time to then appropriately plan for applying for the grants. Does that make sense?
Yes, and 2 items of note, you already have the proposal, we sent it to Art earlier, so.
It should be in your folder, Supervisor. If not, you have it.
It's not, but that's okay.
Yeah.
A lot of things moving around today, I'm sure that was my fault.
No, it's in your office, you have it.
Perfect. So that means that if that's a proposal in my office, it'll be each of the town board members' email as a PDF before tomorrow's end.
By 6:15 tomorrow morning.
What time?
Even better, Art, take that responsibility off of me.
Absolutely.
You're the man. Hey, you know what? We slotted you for 15 minutes, but I gotta tell you, I gave you a lot more time because this is one of the first things I did as supervisor. Art took me down through the mud and muck a couple of years ago when this thing was gone haywire. I was a rookie supervisor, I really didn't know what the heck I was looking at. Unfortunately, Patty, you'd agree with this too, being the sewer liaison, I've learned more about sewer in the last 4 years than I ever imagined I would, and I do know this is a major problem. And it's one that the DEC, I don't think, is gonna have much more patience on with us. So we do have to do something.
Certainly seems that way, a lot of risk there.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.